Haymarket HQ, Australia's first co-working space. Yes, you can have the snacks. With a strategic focus on Asia, so very excited to see you all here. We just started in October of last year, so we're pretty brand new. And our mission is to help Aussie entrepreneurs grow into Asia, connect into Asia. And we do that through workshops like these, well not really a workshop, more a meeting, through connecting startups to entrepreneurs, to investors, and to mentors. And tonight we're going to have quite an exciting big talk with Nick and with Terry. And I'll leave it up to Terry to introduce himself and Nick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my name's Terry Hilsberg. I'm the contribution towards diversity in this group. I'm the angry old white man. And so that's why we didn't need a woman on the panel. So, but we will rectify that next time round. In late 2014, a young chap turned up at the selection process for the muru-D accelerator, and he told me that he was going to put up his app on the Apple Store in China, and millions of people would buy this. And 2 years later, he hasn't sold anything on the App Store. But he has learned a lot along the way. So tonight we're going to have a chat with Nick. And you've seen by the background that Nick is the founder of a company that's now called Learning Confidence. But interestingly, language confidence. Interestingly, that company originally came out of the University of Southern Queensland and some people associated with that. And one of the co-founders of one of my companies introduced me to Nick in late 2014. So this thing's been bubbling along, this whole area that Nick's involved in, for about 10 years, I'd say. And it's really only with the advent of machine learning in recent times at low cost that it really has become feasible and workable. So I'll let Nick tell his story. So Nick, firstly, can you tell us a bit about what the company does, so people got that in their mind?
Yeah, for sure. So originally, it started out as a phonetic-based changing or alternate way of learning phonetics using a simplified phonetic code matched with some animations. That failed miserably. That was the apps that we tried to put up on the App Store. From there, we tried to turn it into an automated tutor, so fully automating the tutoring process where you assess a student, you give them content based on their level of proficiency, you train them in the content, and then you keep recommending based on their progress. Again, the market didn't really want that. We pushed that for a while, and now what we've moved it into is automating standardized spoken tests, i.e. IELTS, TOEFL, Gaokao coming in for spoken element, things like that. And that took almost 3 years in total to figure out. And we're finally starting to make some waves in China with the right people, so it's starting to look, pretty exciting.
So where are you located?
So I live in Beijing at the moment. I spend a few months a year in Singapore, maybe with investors and networking down there. But there's time in nice sunny
Where's your team? Where's your team?
So we've got a team in Boston from MIT and Harvard. We've got a team in Singapore, Brisbane and Shanghai. Okay.
So that bumptious young man who came and told me he was going to change the world before he went and slept on Liz and Phil's lounge room floor. What's your background? You come from an entrepreneurial family or a bunch of bureaucrats or what?
So no, both my parents were actually originally in education. So mum's a teacher for 35 years. My father did a PhD in virology and then taught at university for 25, 30 years. Yeah. And they actually told me to quit this basically as soon as I started, so they don't really understand at all.
Right. Okay, so you started this, were you still at uni or you'd left uni or never went to uni?
Originally it all started, I had a website selling go-kart parts. So I was racing at the time and wanted to race my go-karts as a tax deduction. So I was advertising the website. That's where it all sort of started. I was 17. And And then I started selling festival tickets, and then moved into a hospitality business in Brisbane, which I sold when we started the previous business. And then in between that, went to uni for a bit, kind of got bored after the first semester, failed a few subjects, trying to finish it at the moment 4.5 years later, so we're almost there. And then this is basically just a culmination of 3 years of interest and trying to solve a very big problem.
Okay, so I met you, like, as I mentioned, 2 and a bit years ago, as you were going into muru-D class, whether it was 2 or 3? 2. So why did you were from Brisbane, why did you want to go through an accelerator?
At the time, we thought it was the right decision,
Right.
and I was 21, I think, and had nothing tying me down, so why not? Let's do it.
Okay. And so the sequence was you went into the accelerator, and then I seem to remember that you immediately sort of went off to China.
Basically, yeah. I
And
think,
although you did sleep on Bill and Liz's floor for a while.
For a month,
yeah. But apart from that, what you went off to China. Why did you go to China rather than sit in the comfort of an accelerator in Sydney?
Two main reasons. The first one is for an education-focused company. Never again in our lifetime do I think we'll see what's happening in China. The particularly English space, is 20% year-on-year growth. There's 400 million people learning. There's 1.3 billion people. The second and third biggest populations on Earth speak English for the most part. It's India and America. We're never going to see this opportunity again. And the second part was, where else do you have a bigger challenge than China? Trying to do business in China as a Westerner, like, to cut your teeth, it's the biggest pinnacle, right?
Right. So I went with Nick to Shanghai. I was not with him, but I met him when he arrived in Shanghai. But we lost him on the first day in the subway system, and he didn't have his WeChat location provider on at the time. But you then stayed in China for a fair while, in 2015, correct?
Yeah, so 2015 we stayed there for 5 months in total. We hustled a few free flights from some investors and partners, or potential partners, which saved us a bit of cash and managed to stretch $11,000 for a whole year for 3 of us in China. So it was good fun.
And so, why did you, initially you were going to do a B2C thing off the App Store, right? You were going to teach people English pronunciation off the App Store. Why did you then go to the B2B model that you're using today?
Because China is a glorious place. It's very interesting to launch a consumer product. From having a team that was no Chinese co-founders to very limited funding to limited access to content, things like that. When you look at a number of apps out there that are being pushed and raising huge amounts of money, the model just didn't make sense. We would have died in basically straight away. After talking to people, learning, expats that have app marketing businesses over there, they just say, look, forget it unless you've got millions to spend or a Chinese team.
Okay, so you decided to go to B2B, but you didn't know anyone. So, do you know anyone now?
I know a few people now, yeah. It took a while, but yeah, we're getting there. So originally, we basically got on LinkedIn, started cold calling people, and now we've managed to connect with every C-suite in China, every education business over about $100 million on a first-name basis. And that took 2 years of just pushing, emailing, calling, whatever.
Yeah, and he's not bullshitting you. So you did that. So now you got those relationships with all these people, but is there a lack of competitive tension? In other words, there's only 5 or 6 of these companies, so how do you get them to give you a good deal?
Bullshit. It's tough. So one of the deals we're working on at the moment, they are absolutely bending this over a barrel. They have a user base of 26 million active monthly users, so more than the population of this country. And to get your brand in front of 26 million people for gut, but they know that and they negotiate accordingly, and it makes it very, very interesting.
So as of today, are you still personally doing most of the negotiating, or have you got a Chinese partner, or how do you run negotiations with extremely large billion-dollar Chinese corporations? Do you got anyone helping you?
Yeah, so for the most part, it's still me, probably 50 to 75% of the time. We have a Chinese managing director who's working, or formerly works for KWM, doing IP negotiation, big deals. We've also got an Australian gentleman, similar to yourself, who's been in China for 20, 25 years, and he's introduced us to some of the movers and shakers in China that, the sort of thing that go out to dinner and make things happen, which makes it a little bit easier, but they still know that they've got 25 million people. They don't let you forget about it.
Okay, so precisely where are you at the moment?
So we've got, on Friday, we got a contract from Oxford University Press, which is a whole range of things. There's about 6 elements to the deal. So if anyone doesn't know, the 4th or 5th biggest publisher in the world, about 1.1 billion in revenue US per year. They've offered us access to their online dictionary. It's a data gathering source, so that's fantastic. We've got a pilot with 2 other Chinese corporates. One's 51 Talk. They just listed on the NASDAQ for about 500 million. They've got a bunch of cash to burn, but they also understand that tutors are not the future. They understand you have to automate this process, as well as Ichizoye, who are a homework platform with 26 million users. Obviously trying to add value in terms of automating assessment, generating reports for teachers and students and parents and things like that.
Given that over those 3 years you've also been negotiating in Malaysia and Australia, what's different in negotiating with these big Chinese corporates as opposed to the negotiations in Australia and Malaysia?
If the deals were negotiated outside of China, I have a feeling that they may have been signed already and revenue being generated. Within China, it's a very long, complicated process. There's still the concept of the gongxi, I think the relationship building. Once you get your foot in the door, things move a lot faster, but to get the foot in the door, it just takes so much longer. It's back and forth. There's a lot of sort of pivoting in terms of what you want, what you thought they wanted, what the contract comes back with, then getting passed off to another person that doesn't know what you're talking about, a lot of diversions and things like that. So I think it's definitely the culture, the relationship building, and also the time. You just got to stick it out.
Okay. Now, as a young Queenslander, not exactly from the most diverse state in the nation, when we first went to Beijing, and since then, what are the things that struck you in terms of the adaptations you had to make in your life, or the challenges you faced personally, as opposed to on the business front?
That's actually a pretty big one. So, actually moving there, I didn't know anyone in Beijing. All the friends I'd met the previous year had left. So first and foremost, the first 2-3 weeks were pretty lonely. It went from very, very hot to very, very cold. 35 degrees, riding my push bike around Hadian, to -8 the day I left, which was a bit interesting. Language is a big thing. Most of the Chinese taxi drivers can't speak a lick of English. The food, the pollution, everything, every aspect. Like, we've had 4 times now in 5 months where our apartment hasn't had hot water when it's minus temperatures, and you have to boil a kettle and use a bucket. We've run out of electricity, I don't even know, many times. We've run out of gas. Our landlord walks in and brings 3 people in to look at your room when you're lying in bed. It's different. But at the same time, the expat community is amazing. It's great fun.
Right. So we'll have questions at the end, lots of questions at the end. I'm nearly finished. So Nick, when I met you, you were 21, you're now 24 or nearly 24 or something. So what's the difference between a 24-year-old Nick and a 21-year-old Nick?
Insurmountable, I think. I think that from a business point of view, it's learning what is valued what people are actually going to pay for and what they're not, and how to actually build a business. Things like professionalism, how to write an email. I hadn't even finished my second semester of uni. I was trying to write emails to investors with a $500 million fund. I think probably the biggest thing is learning how much you've got yet to learn. We walked into muru-D, we're pretty confident and pretty arrogant, to be honest. But looking back on that now, it was a long way behind. Probably learned more in the past 2 years than the previous 20, to be honest. And personally, it's just growing up.
Cool. And of the various sources of advice you've had over the last 3 years, are there some consistent sources that are better than others? In other words, don't mean, what I mean is like, have you found that expats in China are better, or people in the industry are better, or have been some better sources than others? Where are your best mentors come from, is what I'm saying?
I mean, look, honestly, they come from lots of different industries. We've got investment bankers, we've got ed tech evangelists, we've got finance guys, we've got tech guys. Take advice from all of them whenever there's a deal going through. If you pitch it to your mentors and say, this is what's happening, they say, the finance guy says, what are the economics? And the tech guy says, what about scalability? It's just all these different sources is bouncing from the range of mentors is probably the best part.
Okay. Now, obviously you're a bit different. You don't speak Chinese, yet you went to Beijing and have stuck it out. And all kudos to you for that. Do you have any general advice for young people who've got a startup who don't speak Chinese and who might go into the Chinese market? Any sort of general laws or something?
I think if China's the focus, you absolutely have to commit to it. Move the business there, move the team, design the product towards the market. I don't think you can spread the business when you're at a startup stage. You haven't got the resources, you haven't got the time, the people, etc. It really did move forward for us in leaps and bounds when I moved to Beijing and started knocking on doors. Not that we weren't before, but actually living there. And someone sends you a message and say, hey, can you meet tomorrow at 10 a.m? You get there and you make it happen. The biggest thing is committing to it. I don't think you can spread your resources. Okay. I also think it depends on the business, product business versus a service business. But that's case by case.
Yeah. Now, last question from me before we open it up to everyone else. Have you got any asks for this group?
Obviously, any introductions to the right people in China. We are looking to put some money in the bank in the next few months. So that's just pending a few calculations on valuation. Introduction to the right people, funding, and we are looking to hire a VP of engineering, so a Chinese VP of engineering. Basically someone that knows the Chinese infrastructure and ecosystem in terms of tech. For example, rolling out a pilot to 30 kids. That's probably one of the key asks at the moment.
Okay, cool. I'll shut up. Questions?
Where's the dev team?
Sorry, Boston.
Wait, Boston.
Yep.
So not moving that to China or to Australia for the tax rebate or something?
No.
Why Boston?
All the talent's there.
Okay.
All the talent, they're basically the smartest kids in the world are coming out of Boston and they all want 10 grand while they're doing their masters at MIT.
Okay.
That's easy access to.
And you need machine learning expertise in particular.
Yeah, so C-Sale at MIT is our recruitment round, basically.
How did you meet them?
Well, the team.
Yeah, team, co-founders, employees, at this stage.
So when the old startup went belly up, I literally got on Freelancer. I spent a month with a guy from Bangladesh. We got a list of about 1,100 people and went through them one by one to find the right ones. And again, LinkedIn, cold calling, whatever. And struck a young Aussie guy, did a PhD in AI at University of Melbourne, was teaching at MIT. Had a job offer from DeepMind, so obviously a pretty bright guy. And contacted him and said, this is the problem I want to solve using AI can we do it? I said, yep, great, let's do it. When do we start? And that was in April or May this year.
That was before you received the funding over. You had enough money to pay them, right?
No, none of us take salaries. So it's all for equity.
You have had one small round out of Singapore.
Yeah.
That's mainly on the functional area, speech, right, as opposed to the machine learning side.
That's more like audio processing.
Yeah, audio
things like that,
processing
yeah.
stuff, yeah.
Question. Did you ever come across any price war in China? Price war. You know,
Price war.
Chinese guys allow price war, even in China compare, you can see the price war.
In terms
so
of...
people are competing with similar product, but they just reduce their price. Even Uber, the Didi, they give out lots of rebate, try to take as much more market as possible.
Yeah.
So did you ever come across kind of price war? And what's your strategy, to tackle this?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think that the Chinese mentality as a whole for the ecosystem is run faster, raise money, run faster, capture the market, run the business at a massive loss, but you get the user base. Yeah, so I think it's probably, if we were competing in the consumer space, that would be an issue, because we're licensing into other businesses and moving into talking to municipal governments about automating school tests and things like that. That's not so much an issue for us, basically because we leverage it off the quality of the technology. Basically the other groups, and I'm not going to bash, it's a bit unprofessional to bash other groups, but the other groups in this space in automating spoken assessment, the quality is definitely questionable, and that comes straight from the consumer using it, the end user. There are parents contacting after-school homework platforms saying this is absolute rubbish.
So with your experience, the difference the product market was with a lot of difference, right? Or just in some cases they thought were sometimes they don't really.
In China, yes and no. Basically, what our leverage point is, we're using the MIT brand. All of our guys come from MIT, the speech lab, the multiple algorithms lab, and the math lab, and we're using that. That's our leverage point. In China, the attitude for the most part as a whole is it's good enough. So for one of our other products, which is facial animations, we've already seen someone try and copy this, but the quality was terrible, absolutely terrible, comparatively. But in China, the attitude is that it's good enough. We'll put it out there in the market and run with it, and try and get that user base, raise money, improve it, and run that way.
Good enough.
Good enough.
More money and keep improving your product.
Yeah, and just run faster. Yeah. So there's a gentleman called William Baobin, runs the SOS accelerator in Shanghai, and he once told us, he said, don't bother with the patent, just raise more money. So just run faster and get the users.
But that's really not work, right?
Sorry?
That's really not work.
Either in a big way or in a failed spectacularly, yeah.
I know sometimes it's a lot to job depending on your context, your industry.
Yeah. And how you negotiate as well, I think at the start is very important, that you're not just putting forward a bit of technology, it's a bit of technology from the best university in the world, with some of the smartest minds in the world, and when you can come from that angle. There's a consumer-facing one, an app called Liu Le Choix. Yeah, Liu Le Choix. And these guys raised funding based on the fact one of them was a Google product manager, one of them went to University of Washington. That's what they raised off to start with. They had nothing, had no products, no team, and they leveraged off this prestigious university brand name.
Another example is my firm. We backed a company in Shenzhen in the adaptive learning space, and I think we put $3 million up front in it, and purely on the basis of with 4 PhDs, 2 from Stanford, 1 from Cambridge, and 1 from MIT, all in the machine learning space, and and they raised, they've now raised a second round, just purely on the brand names.
Did you ever think about the strategy of just differentiating yourself from your competitors?
So, yeah, one of our products is definitely different. We'd say we're